Hi, everybody. This is John Kadlic, the CEO here at Parallel Path, and I'm joined today by Dan Shust, our Director of Creativity and AI, to talk very much about the topic du jour, which is all things artificial intelligence and Gen AI. And Dan, I thought it would probably be best, clearly AI is all over the news all the time. And in given our focus in marketing, I'm just curious what you're seeing as sort of maybe early stage uses of AI in marketing, and some maybe that are more effective than others.
Sure, yeah. Glad to. Well, it's hard to really know where to start sometimes, right? There's, like you said, so much going on. We've seen some of the obvious things that are kind of using the tools as they are intended or as they were built. So, lots of image generation going on with things like Midjourney and Dolly and Adobe Firefly. Lots of kind of general text creation going on with ChatGPT, Claude, other um, tools like that. But I think some of the interesting things we're seeing is maybe the use cases that are starting to go a little bit beyond that, where people are stringing things together, maybe longer prompts or longer requests, or using something like ChatGPT in multiple kind of components or areas of a brainstorming session or a strategy session, seeing really unique uses of image creation, not just in kind of writing a prompt and generating something that's used whole cloth, but generating backgrounds, doing background replacement. Um, I think people are starting to dig in beyond the initial kind of surface layer and starting to do some interesting things in a variety of different areas.
So maybe staying on that for a minute, it feels like there's a lot of so-called dabbling going on, people testing things or fiddling with some of the emerging tools and technologies, but there's maybe been a little lag on what I would say as like commercialization or getting super serious about leveraging AI in businesses outside of some that lend themselves more naturally to that, like the tech industry or whatever. But in the marketing space, like how would brands think about moving beyond this notion of dabbling to something more serious?
I think you're right. I mean, that's where we are. It is the dabbling, it's the experimentation stage. I think we've seen a few cases where people are getting more sophisticated and using it part of their day-to-day and everyday, bigger projects. But what everyone needs to do is really what I would call an AI readiness assessment, and that's something that parallel path that we do offer. What it is looking at your business and your team in a variety of different categories, like everything from what's the leadership's perspective on AI and where it's going? How is the team kind of set up for success? Are there people who are really interested in digging in, or does everyone have a little bit of trepidation? Have you identified the use cases that you think are going to be most impactful for you? And we look at all of that, and teams can look at all of that and kind of put together a score, if you will, of where they are and what needs to happen to get the team moving from that dabbling to that doing phase. So maybe they haven't identified any AI champions yet in the team, or maybe um, they haven't really experimented much. So there's things that need to kind of raise up that they have to do to then be able to say, okay, what's the next step? And so we think that assessment, whether you do it on your own or whether you do it with our help, is something that is really necessary to move to the next step.
So then let's say you do an assessment like that, whether with our assistance or on your own, like you're saying. Are you sort of recommending to brands that they should settle on some sort of AI tech stack like you would with traditional technologies, or how would you think about it? Because things are changing so fast, and
Yeah.
something gets replaced by something else almost the next day, it feels like. So, what would you advise as far as thinking about like tech stack kinds of things?
So right, we look at that assessment and look at the use cases that the team has identified as the most impactful, and then take our knowledge of where the tools stand today. And ideally, you're looking for the least amount of tools that solve the most amount of use cases. So a lot of tools will span across different use cases, and we look at that and then put together those recommendations. Now, to your point, every day things are changing, right? So the nice thing is the relationships you can strike up with a lot of these tools are, SaaS month to month kind of relationships where you can get involved and get experience. And then, yes, if another tool comes out that maybe is better across those use cases, or now will solve for a couple more use cases, you can always make that switch. But we feel strongly that, waiting it out is going to be a game you won't win just because it's happening now. It will constantly change. We've never seen change and evolution and the launching of new tools as fast as we are seeing now. So it's good to get involved, start using it, and then you're kind of ready for if you see something that it's going to be easier basically for you to identify something that's better or more helpful if you have experience now. So setting that initial stack of tools or that AI stack, starting to use those tools to solve on your use cases, and then setting a cadence for here again, either with someone's help or on your own, looking out and evaluating the changes in the landscape that you say, okay, now I might want to take that one tool and kind of try it for a while and sub it in for some of the use cases that I've been using my existing tool for and see if it makes a sense to make that change.
That all makes sense to me. Obviously we spend a lot of our time in the health and wellness space, more specifically, and that brings a lot of additional considerations along the way. So, like, what kinds of advice or considerations do you think health and wellness brands might have specifically in regards to Gen AI?
Sure. Well, I mean, the elephant in the room is HIPAA, and for some health and wellness brands, for hospitals and things like that, we have a big concern over what that means when we're starting to use these tools. And I guess there's good news and bad news there. Right now, there's a very limited selection of tools that you can use whose creators have gone through the process of either becoming HIPAA compliant or being able to sign BAAs, things like that. But the good news is we're seeing more progress on that front. We're seeing lots of tools and companies announcing that they are going through that process now, that they will sign BAAs. So that gives you a wider selection of choices as we move down the path of kind of defining your AI stack and what tools you're going to use. The other thing that we're seeing is lots of teams have found ways to have kind of their everyday validated set of AI tools that they know they can use safely now, but they've worked with their IT teams to find ways to have kind of like a cordoned off test environment or experimentation agreement where they can evaluate tools that may be on the cusp of becoming HIPAA compliant and use them in a way that they're not transmitting any kind of patient information or anything like that, of course, to test them out. So they're not using it for day-to-day work. They're not using it for anything that's mission critical, but they're being able to have that exploration. And we think that's super helpful and important as we go through this process of things changing and evolving and more companies and tools coming online that people that have HIPAA restrictions, companies that have HIPAA restrictions can utilize.
Yeah. Yeah, it obviously introduces a lot of variabilities. And in fairness, across the whole health and wellness spectrum, not everybody has the same kind of HIPAA obligations that some brands do. So maybe there's even more latitude when you're in a less restrictive environment to move
So
the opportunities to leverage AI. So the space is obviously fast moving. We could probably have this conversation virtually every day. But as
yeah.
we sit here today, like, what do you see as sort of next on the horizon? Do you have any sort of like crystal ball predictions in the space?
Yeah, I mean, things are getting really interesting. Or they have been, obviously, but even more so. I think in the next few months, we're going to see more and more progress towards what the industry are calling AI agents. So think about, now we have tools that we can very easily say, write a video script for me or do this for me. But imagine a time when all those different activities we wanted to do, or we want to ask AI tools to do, are kind of strung together and kind of combined into this concept of a marketing agent or a video creation agent or anything you might think of, and it'll do different tasks on your behalf basically until completion. So it might need to go out to the web and do some competitive research, come back, write a script, have another part of the agent evaluate that script, create a storyboard, etc. So we're going to see very easy to use tools that allow us to string together those parts and really work on our behalf in an even more powerful way. And I think we're seeing that now in the beginnings of it, and in the next few months, and certainly when we see things like GPT-5 released and other kind of more advanced language models released, that'll even become more prominent and more possible and easy for us to use across the board.
Well, lots happened in the space to say the least. And what I'd recommend to everybody out there is that you follow Dan and subscribe to his e-newsletter, which we'll put down in the comments later, because this is a fast changing, you know, area of the industry, a lot of curiosity, a lot of testing and learning going on right now. So to stay abreast of things like this, it's important to revisit it regularly. And Dan's absolutely the perfect guy to be doing that for you and for our clients and so forth. So thanks for the time today, Dan. It was good to get caught up with you, and more to come, I'm sure. Take care.
You too.